Hello, students. Today we are doing lesson 8.8, dividing by a monomial. So we have kind of hit on this once maybe before, but we're going to go back over it a little bit more specifically on how to do these problems. So in the past, I showed you how if you had like x cubed divided by x, that would be the same thing as x times x over x. And then you would cross out two of the x's because x divided by x is 1. So those two would cross out. And you would be left with x squared on the top and nothing on the bottom. So that would be your answer. Okay, so we're going to be doing that, but we're going to have a lot more variables in there and some numbers thrown in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with a couple of examples. We're going to have 6 examples on these. We're going to start out easy, and then it's going to get a little bit more difficult. Okay, so let's start with example 1. So example 1 is 32 xyz divided by 4x. So I always suggest that you put this as looking like a fraction where one number is on top and one number is on bottom. And on your homework tonight, it has both ways. It will show it like this, or it might show it with the fraction type. So I'm just going to rewrite this, and I'm going to write it where one's on top and one's on bottom. And so I wanted you to see this so that you would know that sometimes it shows up that way. Okay, so now let's look at the one I did on the fraction type. So first I'm going to do this division. That means 32 divided by 4. That's an easy one. I just get 8. And it's when you divide numbers like that, when you just get a number like 8, then it's going on the top, okay? And then my x's are going to cross each other out because they're the same exponents, x and x. And so that means I only have y and z left on the top. So my answer is 8yz. Okay, pretty easy, hopefully. Okay, so let's go and try example 2. And this one I'm going to have you do on your own. Okay, it's a little bit harder, but I want you to see if you can do it on your own. And if not, then you will come back and see what mistakes you made and how to correct those. Okay, so the problem is negative 18a squared times b divided by 9a. So go ahead and hit pause and solve this one on your own. Okay, now that you're back, you should have first done the numbers up front, the constants up front, and you would get negative 18 divided by 9 is a negative 2. So that's going to go on top. Then when I do my a's, a squared times a is like you have this, right? And so 2 of those a's are going to cross out, and the a that's left will be on top. And then the b is just left by itself. There's nothing to divide it by. So hopefully you got negative 2ab. So the other way you could have done these a's right here is if you say, hey, I know this is a 1 here. When you're dividing exponents, when you're dividing variables with exponents, you subtract. So 2 minus 1 is going to give you 1. And so that would be like this a has a 1 on it. But we don't put 1s on our numbers, right? We just leave them alone. Okay, let's go on to example 3. So example 3 is very much like these same examples. So I'm going to have you do this one on your own again. We're going to have 54x squared y z cubed. And then on the bottom, divide it by 3x y z squared. Okay, so I want you to try that one on your own. Hit pause and go ahead and do it now. Okay, you should be back now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to divide 54 divided by 3, and you should get 18 when you do that math, or type it into your calculator. Right here, I'm going to kind of do this one a little bit different. I'm going to say this x squared divided by x. What I usually do is I cross them out and I put what's left over on the top. So an x is left over on the top, or what's left over on the bottom, but this one's left over on the top. So x. My y's just cross out. And then this part, z3 divided by z squared. That's going to cross out both of those, and I'm only going to be left with a z on the top. So that is my answer. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to move on. Hopefully that was all pretty easy. I'm just checking real quick some of your work. Yeah, so your assignments are pretty easy where most of what's left on top. There's not a lot left on bottom. You can get that later on, and we'll probably have some problems like that later in the chapters. Okay, so let's go on to example 4. Now, example 4 is kind of just a starting example to kind of explain to you how we're going to do example 5. So this one gets a little bit more complicated, even though this one looks simple. It's trying to get you ready for the more complicated one. So it says simplify 15 plus 27, all divided by 3. Okay, so if you were just doing this in a regular like 6th grade math class, you would add 15 plus 27 and then divide by 3. But we're doing this in an algebra math class, so I'm going to show you a different way to solve this. You still get the same answer. But in the next example, you would not be able to add these two. So that's why I'm going to show you a different way to do this. Okay, so we're going to put that top part that's in the parentheses on top and the 3 divided by 3 on the bottom. So this is more like what an algebra problem would look like, right? So we're going to just show you with real numbers why it works once we get into the x's and y's and all that algebra stuff. So now, instead of adding those two like I normally would do, I'm going to put the 3 with each one of these. So I'm going to put 15 divided by 3 plus 27 divided by 3. Okay, so I'm showing you some steps that I'm going to then come back in example 5 and show you why we did it that way. So now I do 15 divided by 3 and I get 5. And I get 27 divided by 3 and I get 9. And then when I add those two up, I get 14. Okay, so let's go in and try some of this with actual algebra numbers put in here, really like variables put in it. That's what I mean by algebra. We have some letters put in here, and then I'm going to have you do one on your own. So example 5 is going to look like this: 12x squared plus 20x all divided by 4x. Okay, so see how this is looking a little bit different than that first one because we have some x's in there. So we're going to do the same thing we did up here. We're going to put it over the number. So I'm going to have 12x squared plus 20x all over 4x. And then I'm going to do like we did here. And we're going to put that 4x on the bottom like we did with the 3. See how we did that with the 3? We're going to do the same thing with the 4x. So now I need to move my thing up. So we're going to put 12x squared over 4x and 20x over 4x. So this is like distributive property is usually how I show it, is that we have to distribute this divided by 4x to everything inside the parentheses. Just like when we're multiplying on the outside of parentheses, we have to distribute it out. We do the same thing with division. So that's what I did here. I put the 4x divided by each of those terms up here. Okay, so let's divide them. So this is 12 divided by 4, so that's going to be 3. And I would only have an x left on the top. And then in this next one, I'm going to do 20 divided by 4 is 5, and both the x's cancel each other out, so all I have left is 5. So the answer to this problem is 3x plus 5. Okay, so not too difficult. You're doing the same thing you did in the first 3 examples that were pretty easy, only you're having to figure out how to get that into looking like those first examples. Okay, so let's try example 6 on your own, and that will be it for today. So really try your best on this one because this could be the last example you have before you have to do these all on your own. Okay, so we have 8x cubed plus 16x squared minus 4x, and we're going to divide that all by negative 4x. So what you need to do is pause the video and go ahead and try to solve that on your own. Okay, now that you're finished, you should have split them into 3 different problems. And every time you divide, it's going to be by negative 4x. Now right here where it says minus 4x, when I bring that down, I'm going to go ahead and make that a negative 4x. It makes it easier when I'm dividing. See how now I can see that I'm dividing by both negatives? So make sure that if you have a minus sign, that just makes it easier. You can still get the same answer, but it's just going to be a little bit more ways to mess things up. Okay, so I'm going to take this first one and I'm going to work that out. 8 divided by negative 4 is negative 2. And then I would get x squared because I have 3 x's on the top and 1 on the bottom. So one of those are going to cancel each other out and I'm going to be left with x squared. Okay, the next one, I have 16 divided by negative 4. So that's going to be negative 4 or minus 4. And I'm going to have 1x left over because I have x squared minus x. X squared divided by x. So remember, when you're doing these, it's just like if you're writing them out. And if you need to write them out, go ahead and do that. So these two would cancel each other out. And so I only have 1x left. Okay, and then the last one, the negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. And then these x's just cancel each other out. So my answer just has 1 for that one. So there's my answer. I also should always look for like terms, but I didn't have any in any of these examples. So that's my answer. So you will have problems just like these 6 examples on your homework. And goodbye.